Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. 522 games have been played, and it all comes down to this one game. Super Bowl 54 is upon us. The much anticipated battle between the AFC has rose from 51 to 54 and a half points. Now, before we unpack this game, I want to share the numbers that are fantasy relevant to the Showdown contest during the 2019 NFL season, including a breakdown of the Showdown numbers for the playoffs. There have been 131 total Showdown contests, which includes 10 playoff games. These Showdown contests for the regular season represented 121 contests. The average winning score was 132.10. The average winning captain score was 42.67. Now, the average Showdown contest, including the playoffs, represented 131 contests. The average winning score, including the playoffs, was 132.29, with an average winning captain score of 43.17. And just the playoffs, which was just 10 games, the average winning score was 134.64, and the average winning captain score was a little bit higher than the rest of the season, 49.24. Since the average captain position represents 33.83% of the average winning score, I focus a lot of attention to the captain's position itself. With that being said, the captain's position breaks down as follows through 131 Showdown contests, which also includes the 10 playoff games. The underdog running back has been the captain for the winning lineup more than any other position, 25 times for 19%. The favored wide receiver, 24 times for 18%. The favored quarterback has been the captain in the winning lineup 22 times for 17%. The favored running back, 18 times for 14%. The underdog wide receiver has been the captain in the winning lineup 16 times for 12%. The underdog quarterback, 10 times for 8%. The favorite defensive special teams has been the captain in the winning lineup 6 times for 6%, and the favorite tight end has been the captain in the winning lineup 3 times for 2%. Underdog tight end, 3 times for 2%. The underdog kicker has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%, and the underdog defensive special teams has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%. Now, I also combine this by position, whether they were the underdog or the favorite, and it breaks down as follows. Running backs were the captain for the winning lineup more than any other position, 43 times for 33%. Wide receivers, 40 times for 31%. Quarterbacks represented 32 times for 24%. All others represented 16 times for 12%. Another statistic that's interesting to me is the overall one-loss record of the captain's team. And the winning captain's team has a record of 94 wins and 37 losses, which is a win percentage of 72%. That means the captain comes from the winning team 72% of the time in Showdown contests. I broke that down by position as well. Running backs, 34 wins and 9 losses, which represents 79% win percentage. Wide receivers, 25 wins and 15 losses for a 63% win percentage. And quarterbacks, 23 wins and 9 losses for 72% win percentage. In the 2019 playoffs, there have been 10 games. As I mentioned, the average winning score was 134.64. The average winning captain score was 49.24. The one-loss record for the captains in the winning lineup was 8 wins and 2 losses, which is a win percentage of 80%. And it breaks down as follows and for these 10 games. The favored wide receiver was the captain in the winning lineup more than any other position in the playoffs, 3 times for 30%. The underdog running back, 2 times for 20%. Favored running back, 2 times for 20%. The underdog wide receiver was the captain in the winning lineup 1 time for 10%. The underdog quarterback was the captain in the winning lineup 1 time for 10%, and the favorite tight end was the captain in the winning lineup 1 time for 10%. And the straight-up one-loss record for these positions breaks down as follows. Running backs in the captain spot were 4 wins and no losses for 100% win percentage. Wide receivers were 3 wins and 1 loss for 75% win percentage. Quarterbacks were no wins, 1 loss for 0%, and tight ends were 1 win and no losses for 100% win percentage. Now let's take a look at these numbers in comparison. The regular season compared to the Showdown contest. The average winning score through the regular season was 132.10. For the playoffs, 134.64, slightly more than 2.5 points difference. The average captain score through the regular season was 42 wins and 67, or I'm sorry, the average captain score was 42.67 through the regular season. The average winning captain score for the playoff games was 49.24, so almost 7-point difference there. And the captain's percentage of the winning score through the regular season, meaning what percent of the captain's score represented was a part of the winning score, 32.30%, and in the playoffs it was 36.57%. In the regular season, underdog running back was the captain more than any other position 25 times for 19%. In the playoff games, the favored wide receiver was the captain more than any other position 3 times for 30%. And it is just crisscrosses. The favored wide receiver during the regular season was the captain in the winning lineup 24 times for 18%. And in the playoff games, the underdog running back and the favored running back each had were the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 20%. The one-loss record straight up through the regular season was 86 wins and 35 losses for a 71% win percentage, and in the playoff, 8 wins and 2 losses for an 80% win percentage. And the totals by position, the largest totals, running backs during the regular season represented 33% of the winning captains, and in the playoffs, running backs also represented the highest percentage of winning captains 4 times for, and they were 4-0 for 40%. So those numbers, you can see they're fairly close, and you have a smaller sample, obviously, from the playoff games, but you can see that they are really close. Like the win percentage through the regular season was 71%. For the playoffs, it was 80%. The running backs appeared in the captain's position more than any other position through the regular season, 33%. In the playoffs, it was 40%. So you can see some similarities there in the numbers, whether it was regular season or playoffs. Now, do these numbers unlock the winning Showdown lineup for the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. But what they do give us are some numbers that we can factor into our overall process to give us a slight edge. And in the end, that's all we're looking for, is an edge. Some of the main takeaways from those numbers I just talked about: running backs appeared in the captain's position more than any other position. 33% in the regular season, 40% in the playoffs. The captain comes from the winning team, 72% in the regular season, 40% or 80%, in the playoffs. So those are just some of the numbers that you can use to factor into your overall process, and the numbers that I use when I'm building my lineups. Now, when I put my lineups together, I use those numbers, and the next thing I do is I take a stand. Who do I think is going to win the game? What's the path to victory? I look at the matchups. Who are the players needed for that path to victory? The running game, the running backs, wide receivers. How are they going to win the game? And I look at it for both sides. If I think this side's going to be losing, what are they going to have to do to be competitive in the game or keep the game close? And come up with a game script. How do I think the game's going to play out? And now that pool of players, I identify some players that I feel have a path to be the highest scoring for the game, and I build my lineups around them through correlation. Some things that I do: if I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I like to put at least 2 targets in the flex spot. If I have a wide receiver in the captain spot, More times than not, I want to use his quarterback in the flex spot. If I have the wide receiver in the captain spot, I like to use the quarterback in the flex spot. The only way he's going to go off is if the quarterback throws him the ball. And those are just some correlations that I like to use. Some other ones I like to correlate. I don't feel that I can rule out the defense. If I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I don't mind using the opposing defense. If that opposing defense has gotten turnovers or done some defensive scoring to cause the quarterback to play behind, obviously he's going to have to do more. So those positions kind of correlate together, and I just build my lineups that way. I've broken this game down and looked at every matchup and come to the conclusion that it truly makes sense that the odd makers see this game as basically a pick with a 1.5 point spread. As I mentioned previously, when I break down a showdown contest, I take a stand as far as who I think will win. In this game, I can truly make a case for the Chiefs and the 49ers. However, since I'm rooting for the Chiefs, that's how I'm going to build my main lineups. If you have seen my channel before, you know that I don't mass multi-entry, meaning I don't put in 150 lineups. I don't have any problem with people that do that. If I was in the position to do it, absolutely I would do it. If I ever get a chance, I will. I might play the 20 entry $1, 20 entry quarters, and some of the larger GPPs. I'll play some double ups, some head-to-head, some 50-50s, and I spread my lineups out across different contests for the showdown. With that being said, this is how I see this game playing out. Both of these teams come in with impressive defensive numbers. San Francisco has a number 2 DVOA versus the pass and a number 11 DVOA versus the run. In comparison, the Chiefs have a number 6 DVOA versus the pass and a number 29 DVOA versus the run. The Chiefs do have a weakness versus the run. Obviously, this points out the weaknesses of as I mentioned, the Kansas City defense. However, in their last 4 games, only one running back, which was Derrick Henry, had more than 60 yards rushing, and that was this past game, and he had 69 yards and a touchdown. The Chiefs were number 8 in explosive play rate, and the 49ers were number 3 in explosive pass play rate allowed. Perhaps surprising to some is the fact that the 49ers were actually number 1 in explosive pass play rate, and the Chiefs are number 7 in explosive pass play rates allowed. This isn't meant to be confusing, but shows that how close these teams are matched up. Admittedly, there are very interesting matchups on both sides of the ball. Perhaps the 2 most intriguing matchup in this game involves the 2 best tight ends in the game, Travis Kelce and George Kittle. Kelce led the Chiefs with 16 targets in the playoffs, going 13. He had 13 receptions on 16 targets for 164 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2 games. Although the 49ers ranked number 7 versus the tight end position this season, they were exposed by tight ends such as Tyler Higbee, who had 9 catches for 104 yards, Jacob Hollister, who had 8 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown, Jared Cook, who had 2 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns, and 2 other tight ends. Jimmy Graham had 4 catches for 59 yards, and Mark Andrews had 3 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. All were able to exploit the 49er defense. Kelce is a difficult matchup and could exploit the 49er defense in the middle with multiple wide receiver sets, and if they get the running backs, Damon Williams, involved in the passing game. Last year, Kelce caught 8 passes on 10 targets for 114 yards. That's 24 Draftkings points in a game versus San Francisco, and that's 24 DraftKings points without a touchdown. On the other side of the ball for the 49ers is George Kittle, who, unlike the matchups for Kelce, is actually faster than the players who will be responsible for defending him. This is due in part to the Chiefs losing safety Thornhill, who was the number 22 safety in coverage this year before going down with a knee injury. The Chiefs were ranked number 28 versus the tight end, and they allowed 14.5 fantasy points per game to the position. What a lot of people perceive as the strength of the 49ers being their defense, I, on the other hand, believe that the speed of the Chiefs wide receivers will open things up for the Chiefs to get Kelsey and Damian Williams involved. If you got your wide receivers going deep trying to take a get over the top, that should open up some passing lanes in the seams and some passing lanes for Damian Williams. And if they get Damian Williams involved, that could open up things even more for Travis Kelsey. I look for Travis Kelsey to get targeted a lot and try to exploit the middle of that San Francisco defense. With a similar game plan that was used against Tennessee, obviously San Francisco wants to run the ball. So if the Chiefs can come out and either get a lead or force San Francisco to the air, that would be how they could control this game. That would change the game script for the 49ers. As I mentioned, the 49ers want to run the ball. They run the ball the second most to the Baltimore Ravens. And if you've seen their last game versus Green Bay, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo only threw 8 passes in that game. That's how they want to play the game. Garoppolo has had a couple games where he did air it out. I think the Chiefs can be exploited a little bit, but I don't think the 49ers comfort zone is going to be putting the game on Garoppolo's back. I would like to mention also, as I said, forcing them out of their comfort zone. Some things to remember too. Drew Brees exploited this same defense. He had 349 yards and 5 touchdowns versus the 49ers. Jared Goff had 323 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Andy Dalton, way back in week 2, had 311 yards and 2 touchdowns versus the 49ers. Admittedly, these teams are different, but Mahomes did face San Francisco in 2018 in his third start and threw for 314 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 38-27 win. I believe both teams will move the ball, and the game total of 54.5 does make sense. This is a build that I like for both teams. I'm going to give you a build for Kansas City winning the game and a build for San Francisco winning the game. As I said, I'm going with the Chiefs because I'm rooting for them, but I honestly feel like this game could go either way. I wouldn't be shocked if either team won this. San Francisco, I think, is a little bit more balanced, but I feel like Kansas City's more explosive and may provide a speed problem. San Francisco defensive backs are very good with Witherspoon and Sherman. However, they're not really fast, and that's a problem when you have someone like Tyreek Hill. And as I said, if they can get their receivers going downfield, pulling the cornerback, or if they're able to get over the top on San Francisco and then start exploiting the middle of their defense with Damian, you can't double everybody. And if you can get Damian Williams involved in the passing game, I don't think the running game is going to be there for Kansas City. If you get Damian Williams going in the passing game, I think that will really open up a lot of things for Travis Kelsey. I actually think that Kelsey and Kittle could have really big games in this Super Bowl. So this is the build that I like for the Chiefs winning. Now remember, I'm showing you my builds not to give you picks. I'm showing you my process, how I use those numbers. Like I said, this is the build that I'm going to use for behind a Chiefs win. And then I'm going to show you behind a San Francisco win. And then I'm going to show you what the optimizers spit out. So I like, in my Chiefs build, I like Kelsey in the captain spot. I'm going to have Mahomes. I'm also going to have George Kittle, Mostert, 49ers defense. And that leaves me 1,600. And I really like this guy down here, Jusic, for the 49ers. They try to get him involved somewhat. Doesn't take much for him to pay off that 1,200. This probably isn't too contrarian. It's leaving 400 on the table. in Showdown contest through the regular season. The average winning lineup left just over $1,000 on the table. Um, that was a number that I tracked from a paid site that I use, and so leaving money on the table is a good thing in Showdown contests. And if you're in a really large, like I think DraftKings has a Showdown contest that actually has like 400 and some thousand people in it, you want to figure out a way to be different. So maybe one of the different things to do is uh, I don't think many people will play defenses in this game because of the game total. So having a defense in there is probably a good thing. But if people do use a defense, it probably will be the 49ers. So perhaps contrarian thing to do would be take the 49ers out, pop the Chiefs in there, who are $600 less. Then you have a little bit more money to work with. You could get up to someone, I don't know what LaShawn McCoy's involvement is going to be. I think he's going to be active, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got him involved a little bit in this game. Ideally, I'd like to get up to Hardman. I think Hardman's an interesting pick this week in the Super Bowl as well. So this is a build that I like for the Chiefs winning the game. Okay, next I'm going to show you something that I come up. Now this is one for San Francisco winning the game. And this one, I like George Kittle in the captain's position. I like the field goal kicker from the 49ers, Robbie Gould. I'm going to go back down and get Jusic again. I'm going to have Mostert. I'm going to have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Now this one leaves a little bit more money on the table, $600. Don't have a defense in there. I swapped that in with a field goal kicker, and this would be ideally you'd probably a real contrarian move would be to take Mahomes out, put Garoppolo in there, and then take that 4,000 and maybe let's take a look at that. Why I'm doing this? If I took Mahomes out and put Garoppolo in, and that will leave 5,200, and you couldn't get up to Tyreek Hill. You couldn't even get up to Damian Williams. I don't like going to Sammy Watkins this week. I was all over him in the championship game. He hadn't had a really good week since the first week of the season. I think he'll be really chalky this week because of what he just did in the NFC conference or the AFC conference championship game. I think Watkins will be real chalky. I don't have much interest in him. But it makes sense. It makes sense to have Mahomes in there. If Kittle and Mostert are doing their things, and San Francisco has got out to a lead, Mahomes is going to come out throwing. Um, the corners for San Francisco doing their thing. That's probably going to open up a lot for Kelce. So that's a San Francisco build, and as I said, that leaves 600 on the table. But I really like the tight ends in this game. I'm sure a lot of people do. I do think Patrick Mahomes will be very popular in the captain's position, but I feel like this is one way to differentiate myself from the rest of the field, no matter what type of contest I'm playing in. So, as I always do, I utilize an optimizer that I have from a paid site that I use. I actually have two different paid sites that have optimizers. And the main reason I use them, like I said, I don't do the MME. It does make sense to do it if you can afford to do it. And like I said, if I'm ever in the position, I will absolutely do it. It just makes sense, especially on things like showdowns and larger GPPs and things like that. But I want to see the different randomizations of the players I like. So the optimizer I set it for 150 lineups. For showdowns, I want 2 unique players for each lineup. And I set the different minimum, maximum exposures. For the Super Bowl, I actually picked out, I believe it was 8 possible captains, and I set the minimum maximum exposures for those. I think the highest I had was Patrick Mahomes in the captain's position, 25%. And then I went on down. I had like Deebo Samuel, 5 to 10%. I had Mostert, 15 to 20%. And I just go down the list. And then I do the same thing for the flex positions. I try not to have too many rules for Showdown because anything can happen, and I want to see a true randomization of the players in the Showdown. So I don't have too many rules. Just a couple that I mentioned to you earlier. Most generally, if I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I like to pair him up with at least 2 targets. In this case, all I did was if Patrick Mahomes was in the captain, I either wanted Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill in the flex. If Garoppolo was in the captain, I wanted at least George Kittle in the flex. And then I let the optimizer do its thing. With the minimum maximum exposures, the captains that I select, a couple little rules. Very rarely do I get the full 150 lineups that I requested. In this game in particular, with the captains that I had selected, it generated 135 out of the 150 requested lineups. And what I've always done in the past, if you're new to this channel, is I usually share 1 or 2 of those optimized lineups with you to show you some different looks that were generated by a computer. So, with that being said, this was one of the first ones that was generated was Kelce. It had the Chiefs defense. It had McCole Hardman, Mahomes, Kittle, and Mostert. And a lot of the optimized lineups, especially the first few, it spends all the money. So this probably isn't too contrarian. Used all the salary. If Mahomes isn't in the captain spot, I'm sure one of the tight ends will probably be popular along with Mostert. But this is an interesting lineup. I think it might be a little bit different because of the Chiefs in the defensive spot. But you could see a situation if they got behind and forced Garoppolo to the air and maybe got some pressure on him, forced some erratic throws, took him out of his comfort zone. The last game, he only threw 8 passes. So if he gets behind and he's having to throw 20 and 30 passes and he's getting some pressure, along with the pressure of being in the Super Bowl, maybe you could get some turnovers, and you never know. So this was one that was generated by the optimizer, and I'm going to show you one more. This one had Patrick Mahomes in the captain. It again had McCole Hardman. Robinson's actually the 3rd wide receiver, but they do have packages in there. They like to get Hardman the ball in reverses. I think Hardman might be a little bit more involved than Robinson this week. Obviously, the 49ers are going to want to try to limit Hill and Watkins, which does open up things for other receivers like Robinson, Hardman. And I think they'll try to spread them out. And if they get Williams involved, that'll, as I mentioned, open things up for Kelce. So it also had Tyreek Hill. I'm not super crazy about Hill. He should avoid Richard Sherman in coverage. Watkins probably going to be covered by Richard Sherman. Sherman doesn't travel to different sides of the field, but the matchup with Witherspoon's not a great matchup for Hill either. However, I will say that Hill definitely. I looked at the cornerback wide receiver matchups. Hill does have a speed advantage over any of their cornerbacks. So we got Tyreek Hill. It also had Jimmy Garoppolo. It also had George Kittle and Jusic. And this one left 300 on the table. So as I mentioned, I think Mahomes in the captain spot's probably going to be pretty popular. And if depending on what type of contest you're in, if you're in a large GPP, I don't recommend playing a lineup like this. It looks a little bit chalky to me with Mahomes, Garoppolo, Hill, Kittle. You got a whole bunch of chalky players in there. You want to figure out a way to be really different. If a cash lineup, like a double up, this might be a decent lineup for that type of contest. So there you go. Sad that the NFL season's coming to an end. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I encourage you to please drop any comments or opinions that you may have below. Please share this video, like it, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when my next video posts. I am planning on moving into the NBA, MLB. Obviously, I'm going to keep at least one video a week with NFL updates, coming up with the draft, the combines coming up, just like an informative station. But I really want to thank you guys for helping me make this channel grow. It's all because of you. It exceeded all my expectations this year. I think I'm at 117 subscribers, which isn't a lot, but it's way more than I had thought would happen. My viewers approaching 8,000, and I really appreciate it. If you're not a viewer or not a subscriber, please subscribe. This information is free. I have some really good information, and give me a chance. You don't have anything to lose. And as I mentioned, I welcome any opinions or comments that you may have. I do have a pretty good cash percentage on these showdown slates. Didn't do too bad in regular main slate contests this year. Did really well in season-long contests. Won both of them. That I was only in 2 and won both of them. But I really like to read ideas that you guys have, and I plan on making this channel bigger and better. And thank you again to all of you. And I will be back later in the week to recap the Super Bowl and kind of give you my plan moving forward. You can also follow me on Twitter at Winning About. I post different information there in NFL. If there's any injury news or anything, you can find that on my Twitter site as well. So I will be back sometime during the week to recap the Super Bowl and let you know the plan moving forward. Hope you stick with me. And again, thank you. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. Good luck and enjoy Super Bowl 54.